I gotta tread real carefully here because I'm stepping into uncharted waters, and on top of that, this take could be perceived as extremely controversial to some, maybe even borderline offensive. And I just want to let you guys know that my intent here isn't to offend, nor is it to be controversial. However, it's just a specific way that this incident has gone forward that I just really want to address. Originally, I wasn't even supposed to make a video on this. I wanted to cover the Washington Wizards and what's going to happen to them next. But after seeing the entire context of this entire timeline and the story with Kyrie Irving and the Boston Celtics and what happened to him at TD Garden, I just figured I'd provide you guys with some context and then you could make your own decision about the events that unfolded. Really quickly before we get to the content, we're giving away a next-gen console to anyone that subscribes and turns on our notifications for my podcast YouTube channel, Laced Up. And in addition to this, I'm giving away a pair of Apple AirPod Maxes to anyone that follows me on Instagram. Now that we got all that out of the way, cue the intro. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? There are things that I need to preface this video with. One, I have tremendous respect for Kyrie Irving's skill and what Kyrie Irving does for his community. As a matter of fact, I think he's one of the most generous NBA players that I've ever seen play the game, and I think it's really inspiring that he decided to place a greater emphasis on his community. However, my issues with Kyrie Irving don't stem from where his heart is and his intent on helping his community. Rather, it's the way he decides to go about it, which I think is a little toxic and can be doing some more harm than good. And there wasn't a better example of this entire situation, more so than when he decided to return to TD Garden. Now, the Brooklyn Nets are facing off against the Boston Celtics. This matchup isn't even close. The first two games were absolute blowouts at Barclays Center, and now the Nets are headed to the TD Garden, where Kyrie Irving is set to make his return to the Garden, although in a Brooklyn Nets uniform. Bear in mind that this is when NBA fans recently were allowed back into arenas, so it's the first time a NBA fan who probably dislikes Kyrie Irving gets to see Kyrie Irving. And before this, there's been a ton of NBA fan interaction that has been under the microscope. You have the Trae Young spitting incident where a Madison Square Garden fan literally spat on Trae Young, and you have the incident where a fan threw popcorn at Russell Westbrook in Philadelphia. And although you can't really say how one is supposed to react to these situations, Russell Westbrook got upset, but that's consistent with Russell Westbrook's personality. Trae Young shrugged it off with a smile, just relishing the fact that Madison Square Garden hates him this much, before he continued to obliterate them and get the Hawks up 3-1 in a series that looks like is going to favor them. Kyrie Irving was prepared for anything that would happen to him at TD Garden, because before even stepping foot in TD Garden, he went out and said this.
I know when you were in Boston, you always had such good things to say about the crowds there and the feeling of playing at the Garden. What do you expect now that there's going to actually be people there in the building as opposed to last time?
I mean, it's not my first time being an opponent in Boston. So, I'm just looking forward to competing with my teammates and, hopefully we can just keep it strictly basketball. There's no belligerence or any racism going on, subtle racism and people yelling shit from the crowd. But even if it is, it's part of the nature of the game, and we're just going to focus on what we can control.
Is it something you've experienced in Boston before?
I'm not the only one that could attest to this, but it's just, it won't. It is what it is.
There is so much to unpackage here, and there are so many interpretations as to how you can take this. This is before even Game 3 happened, when the Brooklyn Nets would lose, and this is way before Game 4 would happen, when the infamous water bottle incident would occur. But here's the thing. And I guess you could call me ignorant for this, I don't understand the rationale of any NBA fan being a racist. The NBA is 75% black players. It's a fairly liberal and progressive league. You saw Black Lives Matter on the NBA courts, for crying out loud. So I don't think a lot of racist people are supporting the NBA. But I could be ignorant, I could be wrong. After all, I can't really comment on things that are in the context of race. I could comment on things that are in the context of Semitism, but not in race. But what bothered me about this instance over here is Kyrie Irving's defense mechanism was literally jumping to the race card, and I think that's divisive. Because with all due respect to Kyrie Irving, if this issue was a race issue, I feel like the Boston Celtics, or any group that's racist, would throw water bottles at every man that's black on the court. And if you paid attention, the water bottles and the booze weren't for Kevin Durant, they weren't for James Harden, they weren't for DeAndre Jordan or Jeff Green, they were just for Kyrie Irving. And you might be wondering, why would it only be for Kyrie Irving? Well, maybe it's because the Boston Celtic fans feel like a scorned, bitter ex as a result of their relationship with Kyrie Irving. They have a right to dislike Kyrie Irving, just as Kyrie Irving had a right to leave Boston and join the Brooklyn Nets. This is nothing new in the confines of the NBA. Hell, this isn't anything new in the context of sports. Remember when LeBron James returned to Cleveland for the first time as a member of the Miami Heat?
He took to the court in Cleveland.
Before he would go on to returning to Cleveland to win a NBA championship for them. Oh, what happened the next time LeBron James returned to Cleveland as a member of the Los Angeles Lakers?
The Cavaliers are NBA champions, and the impossible dream has come true.
Cleveland! This is for you! I knew that my voice and my platform had to be used for more than just sports.
His reception was significantly better. This wasn't an issue that pertained to race. This was an issue of how Cleveland Cavaliers fans felt betrayed by their hometown hero from Akron, Ohio, to go to the Miami Heat to win championships. And once he returned to Cleveland to win them a championship, they were able to allow him to move on because they have a good relationship with LeBron James. And in Kyrie Irving's instance, he doesn't have a good relationship with the Boston Celtics. I'm not trying to justify the way fans are acting, because throwing a water bottle at an NBA player, in my opinion, is barbaric. Spitting on Trae Young is animalistic, as Kevin Durant would say. And honestly, I think the charge that this individual also received is kind of comical, because the man that ended up throwing a water bottle at Kyrie Irving faces assault and battery with a dangerous weapon when he just threw a water bottle at Kyrie Irving that missed. The fan also got banned for life from TD Garden, and that's it for his ability to watch NBA games. Now, I'm not here to say whether the punishment was too much or too little, because at the end of the day, the NBA needs to set a precedence to make sure that this doesn't happen to its players. But what I'm here to place an emphasis on is the irony of Kyrie Irving's statements and interviews, because the basic liberties that he feels entitled to isn't the same way that he is treating other people. For example, you probably aren't shown that Kyrie Irving went and stomped on the Boston Celtics logo, which probably drew the ire of multiple Celtics fans once the game ended, and probably pissed off one Celtic fan so much so that he threw a water bottle at Kyrie Irving. Kyrie then goes in a post-game interview and says that he is a human and he deserves to be treated as a human.
You mentioned, treating you as human, which should be a basic right. I'm just wondering what you would want folks who feel entitled to do that to know about how that makes you feel.
Well, we keep saying things like we're human, but we don't get treated like we have rights when we're out there at times, and people feel entitled to go and do things like that. We claim that we care about each other as human beings, but, we just call things out before they happen, like I did the other day. And like I'm telling people, just keep it basketball. And then you have things that happen at the Garden. You got things happening in Utah, and you know, there's a lot of history there of things happening. So just do your research. I would say to everybody, and hopefully the respect of the game is kept at a high level moving forward. That's what I hope.
Which he's right. He does deserve to be treated as a human, and he does deserve to be treated with respect. But if you're not giving that same respect back to those that you're demanding it from, what do you expect? What is that golden rule they teach us in kindergarten? Treat others how you want to be treated? Well, if you're stepping on the Boston Celtics logo after the already tumultuous history that you have with the Boston Celtics, well, this is going to be the end result. And I find it very ironic that he goes out and calls the individuals watching him at the TD Garden entitled, because he feels entitled to respect from a group of individuals that he provoked himself. I mean, imagine if you're a Boston Celtic fan and Kyrie Irving tells you this.
It's quite important, and I appreciate that, Scout. I joined in, but I shared it with some of my teammates as well as the organization and everyone else in Boston. If you guys will have me back, I plan on re-signing here next year.
Then, after ghosting your team and eventually signing with the Brooklyn Nets, which is a horrible way to leave, might I add, probably a tier below the decision in my opinion, he comes back to TD Garden and then accuses your entire city of being racist, then stomps on your logo and gets upset that someone throws a water bottle at him. Yeah, he's playing the role of a villain. It's almost as if he's provoking the town and is upset that the town is retaliating at him. So I don't really know what stomping on a logo means to Kyrie Irving, because Kyrie Irving already has a very interesting relationship with TD Garden. If you remember the last time he was here, it was in a preseason game where he was burning sage around TD Garden. So I don't know what stomping on the logo means to Kyrie Irving, but clearly he has a disdain for the city, and clearly the city has a disdain for him. I'm going to leave you with one final note. It was 100% within Kyrie Irving's rights to leave the Boston Celtics for the Brooklyn Nets, no matter how ugly that decision was. But it's equally in Boston's rights to dislike Kyrie Irving for doing so. So let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about this. I know this could have been a tad on the controversial side, but I just felt like I had to get this out to you guys. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.